Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Anarchy Analysis LEC 2021 Spring Split Predictions videos. Today we're covering Misfits Gaming in this one, and the squad have increased the lineup size yet again for another season with a massive load of players, 7 I do believe in total, in their roster. Starting topside map, they've got Aggressivo and Hirit in that top lane. Jungle is Razork. In the mid lane is Vethio. In the bot lane, Kobe with either Denick or Vander as his support. This squad looks to be looking to improve the players that they've already got with some OG names in the roster. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this Misfits lineup, whether or not they're actually able to perform to a high enough standard. But without further ado, let us jump into our player ratings, as we've got a lot to talk about. Our first player in this video we are going to be covering is Hirit. He is one of 2 new top laners to this Misfits roster, and he is from Korea, and he's been playing on the 1907 Fenerbahce squad, which won the TCL Winter Playoffs against the Istanbul Wildcats. Now, interesting thing to note here about Hirit is he has not played in a pro team since the winter split of TCL, where his squad qualified for MSI, and since then he hasn't played any pro games, and during that time he's played some Renekton's, Akali's, Aatrox's, GP's. That's literally his playoff pool. He also has pulled out a Callisto, so he likes to play carries in that top lane, and as such he can possibly have a bit of an issue adapting to the tank meta, as he may be not used to it. Obviously, if he's being picked up by a pro squad in the LEC, more than likely he's been playing a lot of League in the recent time. But it's hard to obviously predict and give him stats, considering the fact that he hasn't played a pro game since the 5th month of 2020. And yeah, so let's go over his stats, and this is quite a weird one to give stats to. So I have to give him a mechanical skill of 3.5 here. I was tempted to just go 3s across the board for his stats, but I can't exactly do that, considering the fact that he does obviously have some mechanical skills because he's able to pick up wins on big carry picks. And looking at some of the games he had, his Renekton's games he popped off on, and as such his KDA is very, very huge. Moving over to his communications, this is where I have to give a standard 3. He has been playing in Europe on some squads like LDLC. He was playing on that French squad, and obviously Misfits Premier is a French lineup, so he has typically played with some French players, so he's going to possibly fit in quite nicely with the Misfits lineup. Whether or not he'll be starting for the squad, it's going to be intriguing to see, but you can't really rate him because he just hasn't been playing for pro games on a high enough level for a long time. And lastly, 2020 accomplishments. I'm specifying the summer split. He's getting a 0. One of the only players I feel we can give a 0 to, because there is not really much we can say. Yes, I know it says 2020 accomplishments, but it realistically is focusing on the summer split more than anything, because that is our closest estimate to predicting a player, because I usually do it splitly, these last stats, and the last split was summer. He did not take part in the TCL summer split, and as such he does not get a score for that. The other top laner that the Misfits have gotten is their Academy top laner in Aggressivo. coming to the roster from the Misfits Premier squad that absolutely decimated the LFL finals, winning that one with incredibly easy fashion and moving pretty much comfortably into possibly a second European Masters tournament. Now, going into his stats, as a player he plays a lot of carries, the likes of the Jacks, the Camille's and the Renekton's. He also does play quite a few bruisers, the likes of the Volibear, Malphite in there as well, and as such he plays a wide array of champions as a top laner. Now, mechanically, I'm going in with a 3.7. I feel he's a very strong player, and with the mechanical skills that he was able to show during the LFL, having some pop-off performances, not too many obviously, as there were a few games where he didn't get any kills at all, but a ton of assists, so he was getting involved in the match and team fighting that way. So, a solid 3.6 for that. As for communication, 3.5 for the Mad Lad, and he is a very strong talker. He plays a lot of the sort of role as a communicator during team fights. He's the guy that controls them during the LFL, and as such this is a huge thing and a reason why he's getting quite a high score. Lastly, for his 2020 scoreline, because of the LFL finals, him winning it, he is getting a 3.7, same as any other regional league winner is getting the same 3.7. Up next is one former rookie of the split, in izlogic. The Misfits jungler returns to the mayhem, and oh boy, he's bringing a lot of heat with him, as this squad that's coming along is mighty strong. Now, focusing a bit more on izlogic as a player, he is known for playing very strong tank playing champions. He does have a few carries, the likes of his Lee Sin and Fiddlesticks, which he can whip out in a snap, and yeah, that's sort of his style. So as we look at his stats here, going quite high with a 4.2 for mechanics. Obviously, he does play a lot of tankier champions, the likes of the Olaf, Sedges and Sets, which were playable during the end of the summer split in the LEC, and coming into 2021, I feel that he's gonna thrive in this current meta, and as such, I hope to see him keep a strong score of a 4.2, which is what I'm giving him right now. As for communication, he's getting the exact same score, a 4.2. He is probably going to be one of the biggest leaders in this Misfits lineup, alongside a couple of other players, as one of the probably longest standing Misfits players they've had in a long time. And as such, he gets a high score for communications as probably their captain. Lastly, we're going to give Mr. izlogic a 3 for his 2020 scoreline, as he basically narrowly missed out on playoffs, but he still didn't make playoffs. So he does not get a 4, and as such, the 3 makes a lot of sense for that positioning that he got. Up next, it's a new rookie to the LEC, Invethio, the mid lane extraordinaire on LDLC when they won the European Masters. Kind of struggled during the summer split, going out in the playoffs to the squad Game Ward, and they then eventually lost out in the LFL finals to the Misfits Premier squad 3-0. But as a whole, this guy is a very strong mid laner who plays the likes of the Yasuos, the Syndras, the Ezreals, Auris, Lucians, LeBlancs and Akalis, with a few other champions sprinkled in his recent play history in the LFL. Now, going over his stats, mechanically, I'm going to be very generous and give him a 3.9. I was tempted to go a little bit higher, but I feel 3.9 is a very standard score for him. I feel that he's going to be controlling that lane extremely well with his strong mechanical control mage pool of champions. And as a whole, he also has the potential to play an assassin like the Akali. Even Lucian and Yasuo are classed as assassin mid lane picks now. And yeah, I feel he is very strong for his position, but not the strongest overall in the league. As for his communication, going in with a 3.5. Obviously, Misfits is a French organisation. He's been playing on French organisations for most of his career, so this is not a change of scenery, but it is a few new faces, I guess you would say, to what he's used to. So that 3.5 is just a standard scoreline for mid-laners coming into the league with a lot of expectation on their shoulders. And as for his 2020 achievements, 3.3, because he has done very well in the spring split, but summer, a lot of failure, I would say. Obviously, losing in the second or third round, of playoffs is a big thing. Obviously, he got that far, but obviously, he didn't win it all. Now we take a trip down to the bot lane, where we start this adventure off with Kobe. The Misfits man returns to this lineup yet again with his ragtag pool of Caitlyn's, Jin's, Senna's, Kaiser's, Ashes, Ez's, you name it, he plays it in that bot lane. And he has done a lot of work for this Misfits lineup in kind of revamping their style. He was a key carry for their squad, and he is obviously Mr. Consistent. Now, as we look at his stats, starting off with mechanics, we're going in with a very nice 4.3. Obviously, he is a very solid player, and as such, giving him this sort of scoreline kind of helps you understand how he is so mechanically gifted in positioning well and making sure he does not get killed that often. And if you look at a lot of his team's wins and a lot of losses, he has died minimalistically. Like, the max I see in a win that he's got deaths in is 4. And that was the last game he played in the summer split. As for his communications, 4.1. I feel that he's gonna step up alongside Razork to captain this Misfits lineup and give them a solid voice. He was known for being a solid voice on TSM. That was one of the main reasons why they picked him up into the bot lane last year. But it didn't work out for him in TSM in America, so he came back to Misfits to give them a bit more of a vocal leader, which is something they needed. And finally, for the 2020 accomplishment, we are going to give him a 3. Same as Razork, because Misfits did not actually get into playoffs. Now we've got a player who we didn't get to see much of during this summer split last year, in Danik, who is returning yet again for this LEC roster. And oh boy, we kind of have a lot of expectations when he was picked up for the summer split last year, but then DOS played the majority of that split. Now, this year, he's going to be sharing the support role yet again with Vander, And whether or not he gets to start games, it's very varied, I would say, and as such, it's going to be very intriguing to see if he is the main support. As we look at his pool of champions that we saw in summer, Alistar, Set, and then Bard are the only 3 champions he played. And he plays tank brutally well, Set being one of his most prolific, I remember, when he gets it, along with his Braum and Tom Kench. But as we look at our stats, there's only a few things we can give him. Now, in comparison to Hirit, we can actually give Denick some scores based on the summer split last year. And we're going to be very, very generous here. 4.4 for his mechanics. He is a very strong support who likes to dictate the plays and basically annihilate opponents in a very bruiser heavy sort of style. As for his communications, I am going to give him though a 3.5. Obviously there's something must have gone wrong for him to not play that many games in summer, and he hasn't had time, I would say, to partner up with Kobe as much as he needs to in order to have a strong duo lane partner, because he's going to be sharing a lot of his time with Vander in terms of who Kobe is going to be playing with, and that's a big sort of iffy area, is which support's going to get the most time, which support's going to be playing better, and who can actually do stuff. Lastly, we've got his 2020 achievements. I am gonna be very generous here. I could have gave him the Hirit treatment of lowering his score to basically nothing because he didn't play enough games, but I'm generous. He is getting the 3, the same as the other Misfits members. He still contributed to at least 5 games of their split, and that is technically half of the split. So a quarter of the split he played, basically. Anyway, that's the last part of his stats. Let's jump over to the other support that Misfits have. So, let us discuss probably Misfits' biggest signing in Vander, the new support that they've picked up, who obviously did extremely well on the Rogue lineup. Now, this guy made it through to Worlds group stages where his squad was knocked out by some pretty powerful teams in their group. And as such, he's coming into this split looking for an opportunity to make it back to Worlds via the LEC playoffs. Now, looking at his stats from a mechanical perspective, Vander is on point. He is a very strong mechanical player in controlling the tempo of that Rogue lineup that we remember at Worlds. He was very powerful and prevalent on engage heavy supports, more specifically the tankier supports, the likes of Leona, the Nautilus, and even a Thresh from time to time coming out into the Rift. And as such, Vander can be very prevalent to this Misfits lineup, so he is getting a 4.5 for his mechanical skill. As for communication, he is also getting a 4.5 for that. He is very good with his leadership and communication. He was probably the biggest voice on the Rogue lineup. He was the OG player that was training the rookies. And if you remember, back in 2 splits ago or 2 seasons ago, when Rogue first joined the league, Vander was there, brought in, trained up these rookies, and that Rogue squad just kept on improving and improving until they finished first place in a regular split last year. Now, his 2020 accomplishments, based off of where they finished last year, they got a 4.3 for me. And I was tempted to give them the 4.5 to kind of equal out to Fnatic, but the 4.3 is a bit more fair because Rogue as a squad didn't do too well at Worlds in comparison to the likes of Fnatic and G2, but they did finish well in the regular split of Summer. But that is going to be our last player given a score to. Why don't we jump over to our illustrious LEC table where we can rank and slot in this Misfits lineup. So, as our LEC predictions table grows bigger and bigger, it's time to add another name into the list. Misfits Gaming, the roster with the largest amount of players, is entering our table, and this signifies pretty much just over the halfway point of our team listing, and I am interestingly gonna say that Misfits are not gonna make playoffs. That is my prediction for this split. I do feel that this roster has got the strength to do it, but with the rest of the squads that we've got to add and the squads we've already put in, they're just not quite there, and I think they'll take this split to evaluate the squad that they've got, maybe lose a couple of players, obviously with the top and supports competing for the starting spot. I've got a feeling that they're going to probably drop one of them in each role, and then next split in Summer, challenge for a playoff spot along with the likes of XL and possibly achieve it. Nonetheless, that is going to be it for this video. If you've enjoyed it, leave a like down below. Subscribe if you're new around here if you want to. And I will see you guys later. Peace out.